Hey everyone, my name is Brendan, I hope your day's been going good, and oh boy, do I love being able to play my games easily and conveniently through re-releases on modern hardware. Oh boy, oh gee, do I love video game preservation. No!
Nintendo, what the f is wrong with you?
Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry, that was probably a little bit too harsh to start off, huh? No, what I meant to say was, what thine f***ers aren't wrong with those.
Okay, before we get into what's going on with... Oh, gross, get it, get on my screen, I want to briefly talk about something that I think we can all get behind, and that's the idea of video game preservation. Even when compared to stuff like movies and music, video games are an extremely fragile medium of entertainment. With a movie or song, for the most part, you can easily just pull them up on a streaming service or download them to your phone or something, and boom, high quality version of the thing you're looking for right there. It's Super Lopez time, bitch. When it comes to games though, that's a bit of a different story. While there are a good amount of games re-released or remastered on modern platforms, there are still a massive amount locked to the original hardware they came out on. I can play Skyrim on a fucking toaster if I wanted to, but when it comes to Burning Rangers, it's currently burning in hell. There's a ton of games still stuck to the systems they were originally released on, and even if they were re-released at some point, that could have been years ago now on a now old console. If you wanted to play these games, you'd have to either go out of your way to buy the original console, controller, and game, or have a good enough PC to emulate the thing, and both options can be rather expensive, and in the case of the latter, time-consuming. Unlike with movies or music, which can more easily be brought over to things like CDs, DVDs, or just straight digitally, when a game is developed, it's developed with the original hardware in mind. Some games take advantage of very specific hardware that was exclusive to what they were originally on, and as a result, can make it more difficult bringing them over to newer hardware. Some games might be using a special chip, some might be using peripherals like a light gun, and some might be using a special kind of control scheme. And even if you do successfully port over one of these games, there might be a few different versions of it. Yeah, you might be bringing Persona 3 over to Steam and other platforms, but when you say that, which version are you bringing over? You have Persona 3 FES, which compared to the original release had quality of life improvements and a new epilogue chapter. There's Persona 3 Portable, which is completely different from the console versions in some ways since it had to run on a handheld. Or you could just straight up do what Atlas actually decided to do and bring over a version that mixes elements from both FES and Portable. And hell, even in those cases, you'd still be leaving the original version back on the PS2, meaning that the original version of the game is still hard to play for those who would want to, as it wouldn't have been preserved like the other versions were. There's also the whole argument of physical versus digital gaming, which is a topic I'll go much more in depth with some other time, but I thought I'd still bring this up anyways. With physical games, well, yeah, I love having a wall of plastic shit and a bunch of consoles hooked up which will probably contribute to a house fire someday. It's just a fact that someday, even if it's a very long ways away, all of these discs will eventually rot and these cartridges will stop working. So while physical copies of Chibi-Robo on GameCube might be the shit now, give it some time and it'll end up just about as useful as Ziplash is. While I vastly prefer having physical games to digital, I won't argue that it's really important we have all of these games available digitally as well to help preserve them. In fact, I'm in full agreement to that. Why the hell wouldn't I be?
It's a digital file. I hate it. It's making me sick. It's making me vomit. You're gonna throw it in the corner and shun it and burn it with fire. Burn it. Burn the fire!
Games are a tricky medium when it comes to preserving, since there are so many different factors that can play into it. Game preservation can be an extremely time-consuming, expensive, and egregious process. Garrett Fredley, a former game preservationist at EA and current member of Sony's PlayStation game preservation team, actually made a really good presentation going over the whole process at GDC a few years ago. Recommend checking that out if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Making a good port or remaster of something isn't as simple as pressing the Make Product button, so I can kind of understand sometimes if it might take a while for an older game to be brought over to new systems in some capacity. In specific instances, if you're a multi-million-dollar company and you can't figure out how to port f***ing Clu Land to your online subscription service, that's on you, man. Different companies have been attempting to preserve their own, and even other companies' libraries of games over the years, all to varying degrees of success. On Sony's end, one of their more recent efforts when it comes to video game preservation that I very briefly mentioned before is with the announcement of their game preservation team. While not too many of the specifics are known as of now, it seems like it's just a larger effort towards taking their old games and the things used to create/develop them, and go through the process that would make them more easily accessible for if they needed to do something, say, like a port or remaster. PlayStation, though, also has PS Now, their game streaming service, which gives access to games from the PS4, PS3, and PS2.
Oh, we tried to add PS1 games to the service, but the second Ape Escape entered the PS5, it f***ing exploded!
I don't own either a PS4 or PS5, so I haven't personally used the service, but considering that it's streaming games to your console, there's always the chance you'll encounter some sort of delay while playing, since it'll be dependent on both the service itself, as well as your internet. Sony's also, in my opinion, the most iconic when it comes to backwards compatibility on their systems, having PS1 game discs playable on PS2, PS1 and PS2 discs playable on their original PS3 model, with PS1 support carrying over to the other models as well. Then, most recently, we have PS4 discs playable on the PS5. While we're on the topic of backwards compatibility, Xbox has actually made some attempts with this kind of stuff as well. On the Xbox 360, if you had an official Xbox 360 hard drive, you would be able to play certain original Xbox games. Then with the Xbox One, while Microsoft didn't plan on doing anything with it at first, backwards compatibility eventually became a rather large thing on the system. Most of this effort was done in regards to playing the games digitally, as backwards compatibility wasn't built into the console originally. If you put in compatible Xbox or Xbox 360 games, they'll download to your system. Now with the Xbox Series consoles, all of them are completely backwards compatible with Xbox One games. One other good thing that Xbox does with game preservation is their Game Pass subscription, allowing access to a plethora of games from that system and from other systems as well. For all the good done here though, overall, game preservation has been pretty spotty throughout the years. Backwards compatibility has been very inconsistent due to how costly and difficult it can be to get working, and even when it is offered, it can be missing huge chunks of a console's library. Offerings on digital storefronts and subscription services aren't always the greatest either, and game preservation generally still isn't always seen as a priority to these large companies. So, where the hell does this announcement fall into all of this? Nintendo has what is probably the most iconic and impactful back catalog of games in the entire industry. Which is why it hurts so bad when they refuse to let us play them. It shouldn't take you 4 years to bring over Earthbound. What are you guys doing? You knew how much people wanted it. You dedicated a slot in the Direct solely to these games. There's no reason why it should take this long for them to happen.
Well, Drewdan, maybe you should just cut them some slack. They were probably working very hard on bringing over other games, like with their expansion pass.
First off, no. Second off, don't even get me started on the expansion pass! Wait, no, I'm getting sidetracked. We'll get to you later, though. Third off, while it's still ridiculous that these games have taken as long as they have to come over to the Switch thanks to Nintendo's tried and true drip feed approach to their content, I wouldn't be as mad about it if it weren't for one small factor. We've come full circle, everyone, so let me introduce you to a little thing that I like to call the Virtual Console! Woo! Let's go! Give it a round of applause! Give it! Yeah, bring that down! Let's go! Woo!
We've had games like Earthbound over here and countless others available to us on more modern hardware for years now thanks to Virtual Console. I'll admit, yeah, while it would take a good while for certain games to come over to the Wii U and 3DS Virtual Consoles back when they're still receiving new titles, and the Wii U also had this terrible drip feed approach to game releases, it was never as bad as it is now. With NSO, new games are added sparingly, only coming every few months, and even when they do, it'll be some very obscure game that the majority of people won't get that excited over. There are still loads of games that were on Wii U and 3DS for years, and even after nearly 4 years of the Nintendo Switch Online service, the vast majority of these still aren't available on Switch. And that's the sad part about it. With all the success the Switch is having, you'd think Nintendo would be working on bringing over even more of their old games to incentivize more people to sign up for NSO, or hell, even selling these old games separately on the eShop. You know, kinda like the Wii U and 3DS did? You guys could actively be making loads more money while simultaneously making your fans incredibly happy in the process. Do you know how many companies would kill to have that opportunity?
Stop whining, bitch. Take Spanky's quest. It will surely ease the pain. What are you doing?
Shut up, I'm stress eating.
This is why this announcement upsets me so much. As of late March 2023, it will no longer be possible to make Nintendo eShop purchases for the Wii U and the Nintendo 3DS family of systems. On May 23rd of this year, Nintendo took away the ability to use credit cards to add funds to the Wii U and 3DS eShop. On August 29th of this year, they took away the ability to add funds altogether, although you could still probably get around that by having your Switch linked to your Wii U and 3DS account. And in March of 2023, support for the service will be cut entirely. No more purchasing games, no more buying DLC, nothing. For what goddamn reason? It's not even like they're pulling the plug for support on these systems entirely either, as to our knowledge, we should still be able to play games online for the Wii U and 3DS, which makes the shop closure all the more confusing. Nintendo worked for years building up a massive library of their own and other companies' games all in 1-2 places, only to now go and throw it all away. Now, something similar like this happened a few years ago when it was announced that the Wii Shop channel would be closing. While you would still be losing a bunch of digital-only games exclusive to the shop channel with this closure, you'd, at the very least, still have the 3DS and Wii U shops up, which, while not having as many games available on them as the Wii did, still had a pretty sizable library of older titles. Nintendo Switch Online, on the other hand? Man, we only got N64 games around a year ago. This is depressing. With the closure of the Wii U and 3DS eShops, this will mark the end of the Virtual Console brand as we know it, which has been kicking around since the Wii launched back in 2006. Nintendo these past few years have been terrible when it comes to game preservation. They've drip-fed us retro game content that was already available on older platforms and services, given us little to no places where we can buy these retro games outside of NSO, and generally just treat both their fans and own games with little to no respect. For Christ's sake, after someone scanned in a photo of a 26-year-old Mario 64 strategy guide, which was publicly available in Japan at the time I might add, Nintendo sent them a notice and forced them to take it down.
Whom thine f***eth doeseth that
So, to honor the shining example of game preservation done right, and to spin Nintendo's face a little bit, I thought we'd take a look back through the history of Nintendo Virtual Console and the legacy it left behind. Now, before we start talking conception, we need to start talking conception. The birds, the bees, the wees, all of it. On November 15th, 2002, a year after the console originally launched, we would see the release of the Xbox Live service on the original Xbox. The service allowed players to play online games with friends and voice-masked old men alike.
I'm going to burn down your home! I'm going to take your spleen and turn it into a delicious souffle! I'm going to crush up your bones and feed them to my doggish kibble! I'm going to multiply your elbow count by 3!
What are you even talking about, man?
I'm f***ing love Ridge Racer!
Well, I think most people remember the original Xbox Live service as something the Xbox 360 introduced, as it was very prominent on that console. Xbox Live Arcade was actually introduced back on the original Xbox. All you'd have to do is just pop in an Xbox Live Arcade disc to boot up the service and BAM! Hamster ball on my TV? Well, someone call up the king of curiosity, because mine has surely been piqued. I must know more. Yes, fine. Give it to me. F***ing hamster ball! Xbox Live Arcade here would allow you to play a selection of some smaller titles, including, of course, retro games. Xbox Live Arcade in 2002 would lay the groundwork for similar services like it. Yeah, it was small and didn't have too much on it, but it was the starting point for greater attempts in the future. This brings us to 2005, where underpaid IGN employees and degenerate gamers alike were eagerly awaiting the Geek Fest that was E3, because it's not just a game conference, it's a holiday, damn it. A holiday for gamers! During Nintendo's previous E3 press conference in 2004, they briefly mentioned that they had a new console in the works, and that it would create a gaming revolution. Nothing specific about the console was mentioned here other than that, not even its technical specs.
I suppose I could give you a list of our technical specs. I believe you'd like that, but I won't for a simple reason. They really don't matter.
Well, someone's excited. But at around a little over 30 minutes into the conference, we would see Satoru Iwata himself walk out onto the stage, call Reggie
Daddy,
and then pull a gun out of his coat pocket, holding up the entire audience and asking for a ransom. And then pull out of his coat the very console they'd mentioned the previous year, the Nintendo Revolution. The crowd goes nuts, and rightfully so. It's video game. Iwata then goes on to talk about how the Wii will be backwards compatible with all GameCube games, with it even being implemented in the console's original logo. The thing of note here that we've all been waiting for, though, finally happens, and those sweet words exit Iwata's mouth.
But we are redefining the term backward compatibility. That's because we have designed Revolution to be a virtual console capable of downloading 20 years of Nintendo content.
The crowd went more wild over this than they did the mention of Smash Bros. And the console reveal itself. If that doesn't convince you how much game preservation means to people, then I don't know what to tell you.
The idea of a single device transporting us back to the first Excite Bike, Earthbound, or Punch-Out should make us all feel young again.
Damn, this bitch kinda ugly.
I'm ready to play Earthbound, Mr. Iwata.
Earthbound sucks.
Goo gaga, mother.
From what Iwata was saying here, this virtual console on Wii would be capable of playing practically any previous console Nintendo game if they wanted it to, and that was only scratching the surface. Who's to say you couldn't add games from the handheld lineup as well? It obviously wouldn't make sense to include DS and GBA games on there, since this was when the DS was still new and when the GBA was still being supported, but original Game Boy and Game Boy Color? That stuff could totally get added, and that's not even mentioning third parties as well. The possibilities here were endless. It was just a matter of finding out how far they went with it and how much they actually wanted to push the service. The Wii first released in North America on November 19th, 2006, with Virtual Console support being available there from day one. The console would then also release in other regions as well in early December of that year, with Virtual Console of course coming alongside it. Something like Virtual Console coming out was a big deal at this time. It would let people re-experience the games they grew up with, as well as introduce a whole new generation of people to these classic titles as well. This was also around the time people were beginning to become nostalgic over games from the NES and Genesis era, and this was already after people had been nostalgic over games from the previous generation of consoles as well. This was the prime time to release a service like this, since so many people were itching to replay these old games they grew up with. Thanks to Virtual Console, the Wii was looking to be the ultimate Nintendo system. Want to play an N64 game? Buy a Wii. Interested in playing an SNES game? Bro, go out and buy a Wii. Getting a nostalgic itch to play an old NES game? Motherfucker, we've been over this, you gotta go buy the Wii! Hell, even just playing one of your GameCube games from the previous console generation? Well, I mean, it's built into the console right there, so why not? The Wii was a shining example of game preservation done right. Nintendo genuinely cared about giving consumers an easy way of playing their, and even other companies' older titles. Wii Virtual Console paved the way for how Nintendo would view their back catalog of games, and this mindset of giving players easy access to their legacy content would last well into their future systems. Most of them. Wii Virtual Console would launch with 12 games, 7 NES games, 2 SNES games, 1 N64 game, and 2 Sega Genesis games. Overall, a pretty good start to the service. There's a good variety of games here ranging from a few different console generations. You had the NES games capitalizing on that up-and-coming nostalgia, some quality SNES games, what's arguably the most iconic and impactful game from the N64, and the 5th generation of consoles as a whole thanks to backwards compatibility. Hell, you even had Sega throwing their hat into the ring as well here. When it came to buying the games themselves, the Wii Shop channel would have its own currency. Wii Points, or as I like to call them, Geek Bucks.
I'm rich as you just cause you can't be cool like me.
Around this time, companies thought they'd try and get cutesy with the currency they used in their online stores. Take for example Xbox 360, it had Microsoft points, but not only Microsoft points, a terrible conversion rate too! How the f did you guys land on this? The price of different Virtual Console games had a bit of a range, depending on which console the game you were buying was from. Some of the prices were reasonable, and some of them weren't. Nah man, I can't say that one with a straight face. $5 for an NES game? Like, that's not surprising or anything, and $5 isn't a lot to ask, but it's an NES game? I could probably run this thing on a slice of bread if I wanted to. They also did this weird thing where they charge more money for games that were imported or that hadn't originally been released outside of Japan. Take for example Mario's Super Picross, where instead of it being 800 Wii points, or $8, it's now $1 more. But you weren't even importing anything. It's a digital file. What are you on about? Why do we have to pay more for this? I need that extra 100 Wii points to set aside for my child's college fund, damn it. As far as output for the Virtual Console, you would always have a steady stream of games coming out, varying from console to console, of course. You'd have 90-something games for NES, SNES, and Genesis, but then the N64's library would look malnourished in comparison. What have you guys been feeding him? I can barely detect a pulse here. Hey, oh, someone call a doctor. Someone call a doctor. I think they put Donkey Kong down and they got Bomberman Hero on life support. The N64 didn't have the largest library of games to begin with, and that along with trying to license third-party games for the service probably made it hard to get a lot of larger ones on here, especially when compared to a library like that of the NES. Regardless, there is always something to look forward to with a constant steady stream of games coming to it. Hell, why do you think we still to this day celebrate Wii Shop Channel Wednesday?
Adventures of Love 1 and 2. King's 96 does 2-man food.
It might take a while for one of your favorites in specific to come over to it, but the Wii Shopping channel would always be updated with at least something new to play. There might be a slow trickle of titles coming out for a specific system, with a few games during that month at max, but as a whole, there is a fair amount coming to Virtual Console at any given time. The way the games were released wasn't perfect, but it was far from bad, I'd say. I was just a fetus when Wii Virtual Console came out though, so what the hell do I know?
May we play Sin and Punishment tonight, Father?
Hey yo, shut the hell up!
Conform to retro, Bertley!
Out of the 12 games that come out on launch day, at least here in North America, the NES was the system that had by far the most love, with 7 titles and a whopping none of them being Super Mario Bros. Are you shitting me? This right here, this is raw, this is rotten, this is rotten! You have some good games here, Donkey Kong, the Mario Bros. Arcade game, and even The Legend of Zelda. But no Super Mario Bros., really? It eventually would come out on Christmas Day a month later, but it just baffles me how it wasn't part of the launch lineup. Like, was it delayed? It might sound stupid to say considering it's a 30-year-old NES downloadable title, but after Super Mario Bros. 3 was delayed on the Wii U Virtual Console, I'm convinced anything's possible. NES games would be added pretty regularly throughout the Virtual Console's life, since the games themselves weren't the most intensive, and there was a massive library to choose from. Nintendo would eventually put out their final first-party NES games on Virtual Console at the end of the year in 2008, with NES game releases slowing down immensely after that. Another console part of the launch lineup, the SNES, also had a decent stream of games being released. They weren't as frequent as NES games were, but it wasn't the worst thing in the world, as 74 games by the end of the Virtual Console's life is pretty nice, especially since you have a lot of the console's best games there as part of it. There were some strange omissions from the lineup though, as any game that used the Super FX chip, which was primarily used to create both 3D and advanced 2D effects in certain games, never appeared. The reasoning for this was, as stated by a representative at Nintendo, that it would simply be too difficult to emulate the Super FX chip and the games that used it. Plus, the chip itself wasn't made by Nintendo. It's most likely Nintendo just didn't want to put in the extra effort of trying to emulate the chip and paying a license to use it, which isn't really surprising. The last of the first-party consoles Nintendo had on Virtual Console was the N64, having the lowest amount of games available to purchase out of the 3, with there only being 21 of them. There were a lot less N64 games on the original system overall compared to NES and SNES, but I don't know, it's still kind of disappointing having so few here in comparison. There are a lot of really great N64 games missing here, with the biggest omissions of all being the games developed by Rare. Aside from Nintendo, of course, Rare would be doing the heavy lifting when it came to the N64 game lineup, basically making up half of it themselves. As I'm sure many of you are already aware though, Rare was bought out by Microsoft in 2002, meaning that all of their games from the N64 era would be appearing on Xbox Live Arcade instead of Virtual Console. Banjo-Kazooie, Perfect Dark, Diddy Kong Racing, Conker's Bad Fur Day, GoldenEye 007, although trying to re-release that game is a whole other story in itself, all missing from the Virtual Console. It really is a shame, as I'm sure a lot of Wii owners who played these games back when they first released would have loved to play these games again on a modern Nintendo system. That's it for first-party support though, no Game Boy or Game Boy Color games. To fill in any gaps in the lineup on Nintendo's end though, are the many different third-party systems available here. Master System and TurboGrafx 16 games were available at launch, unless you were living in Australia. In that case, you'd have to wait until July 2007 for TurboGrafx games. I know, heartbreaking, I'd riot too. Neo Geo was added in September of 2007 in Japan and October of that year internationally. Genesis games released in early 2008. Commodore 64 games came out for it in March 2008 in Europe and February 2009 in North America, although strangely many of the games would be delisted in August 2013. MSX games released in May 2008 for Japan exclusively because, much like Australia and the TurboGrafx-16, we just can't trust other people with access to the adventures of Randar III. Heartbreaking, I know, because I too don't give a shit. Then lastly, the classic arcade series of games was released for Virtual Console in March of 2009. So, overall, yeah, even excluding Nintendo games, there was a lot to play here. Nintendo stuck with their promise when announcing the Virtual Console service that it would be a place to play a bunch of Nintendo's past games, even doing more than that and having access to a large amount of other companies' games as well. For a long while, the Wii could act as an all-encompassing of sorts, with access to years and years of legacy content.
You're shitting me.
All of this would eventually have to come to an end, however. As we've learned from early online gaming, you can't keep these online services running forever. Nintendo is a business after all, and as such, there comes a point where they have to look at something like the Wii Virtual Console and weigh whether it's profitable to still keep it running. Nintendo would choose death, and it would be announced that on January 30th, 2019, the Wii Shop channel, and as a result, Virtual Console, would be closing their doors and going offline for good. Excluding a strange 4-month period of maintenance from March to July of this year, players would still be able to re-download any games they had previously purchased. New purchases, however, would be a no-go. After a good run of nearly 11 years, Virtual Console would sadly come to an end. It lived, bitch. The year is 2010, and while I was busy shitting myself over Super Mario Galaxy 2, Reggie was busy anti-shitting himself on the E3 stage.
Going back to the jungle this holiday.
Reggie name drops Nintendo's next new system, the 3DS.
3D like the blue people?
We're given a brief history lesson, you better have been taking notes. Nintendo execs are tormented by the power of the 3DS as per usual Nintendo shenanigans, and the system is fully revealed. Kid Icarus Uprising would be the first game announced, and it looked like this big, exciting 3D adventure, and one that you could take anywhere with you with the power of 3DS. But screw that, what about the Pixel shit? It was announced that along with the console's launch in early 2011 would be the return of Virtual Console from the Wii. This was exciting. Virtual Console and Wii had a massive library of games on it, but the entirety of Nintendo's handheld library had been missing. With the 3DS being a portable system, it would be a pretty safe bet to say that Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and even Game Boy Advance, we'll get to you later, titles would come to the service. Even getting some of the older console titles was likely as well. Wii Virtual Console was a really cool idea and was awesome at the time it came out, but now with the service on a portable system, the possibilities for how we could play these older games only grew. Prior to the 3DS though would be another portable online store, this time on DSi. DSiWare it was called. Unlike Virtual Console, which had a focus on retro games, DSiWare would instead focus on downloadable and original titles. While not the same as Virtual Console, the DSiWare storefront kind of set up the basis for Virtual Console and the eShop as a whole on 3DS. On that note, the 3DS launched and there's absolutely no Virtual Console or eShop at all for that matter.
What?
You wouldn't be able to use the web browser here either. You telling me I wouldn't be able to use Twitter on my 3DS for 2 whole months? Now I have to get a life! Nintendo just seemed to need more time to finish the 3DS up and get the online side of things ready, which is fine by me. Better done right than rushed. Begs the question why Nintendo would release the 3DS in an overpriced and incomplete state anyways, but whatever. Regardless, Nintendo was planning to release all of these features via a firmware update in May of that year, before it was delayed again, and it actually came out on June 6th in the US and June 7th in Europe and Japan. With the launch of the eShop on 3DS came all of the retro titles available on Virtual Console as well, and there were a few different systems here to choose from. This time around, as many might have expected, Nintendo's portable library of games took a larger focus here. Game Boy and Game Boy Color games were offered, but oddly no Game Boy Advance titles. There shouldn't really be any trouble getting the games to run on the system. But hey, who knows, maybe Nintendo had some plans for them later in the system's life.
I don't know, maybe, who knows, maybe we will, maybe we'll see them, I don't know, maybe.
Sega even threw their hat into the ring again like they did with Wii Virtual Console, this time offering games from their own handheld, the Game Gear. Portable games aside, you also had some games from consoles as well, primarily the NES, or if you're living in Japan, 3 games from the PC Engine, or TurboGrafx-16 as it's known in North America. Overall, a pretty decent lineup. Not as large or exciting as the one on Wii, but that's kind of to be expected. This wasn't a large main home console. It wasn't gonna have the same technical capabilities as something like the Wii, and even if a lot of those retro titles could easily run on 3DS, it likely wasn't as big of a priority to certain companies. The Wii was owned by frivolous uncles throughout the world, and the 3DS? Oh boy, the 3DS. The system was not doing all too hot in its first few months, and as a result, Nintendo would pull what we modern Nintendo fans now deem unthinkable from the company. They would give the 3DS a price drop. No way! That's crazy! I would have never guessed they'd do such a thing! The 3DS originally launched at a price of $249.99, but come August 12th, 2011, the same year the system came out, it would be receiving a massive price cut to $169.99. A price cut this soon after the console came out was bound to annoy people who purchased it within the first few months, which is why Nintendo gave early adopters of the system 20 free games for supporting them early on. With the system already doing more than expected out of the gate, Nintendo wanted to maintain trust in their fans and, as they put it, express their gratitude to their special customers.
Oh, Nintendo, stop! You're gonna make me blush. Special customer? Me? Special? No! I'm normal as
These special customers could be added to Nintendo's Ambassador program if they connected to the eShop at least once before 11:59 p.m. on August 11th, where users would automatically be registered. A few weeks later on September 1st, Ambassadors would be able to redeem 10 NES games ahead of their regular launch.
Super Marlboro, Dunk Conk Mini, Floaty Brawl,
Freezy Ascendance,
The Tale of Young Spandex Lad Cloaked in Green, Metroid,
Sport Ball Long Edition, F***ing shit up,
Zoinks 2, The Elastic Journey,
and Yoshi. And hey, look at that! They actually have Super Mario Bros. As part of the lineup this time. Nintendo, I'd congratulate you, but that's the bare minimum, so instead I'll muster up a smirk for you. How about that?
Those NES games, however, were just the start of the meal, as the main course would be brought out starting December 16th, 2011, when they brought out this steaming plate of GBA games. Oh boy, I cannot wait to take a big, juicy bite into Wario.
Oh, sorry. I'm just a big fan of micro games.
This lineup of 10 games would include Fast Max Vector,
The Tale of Young Spandex Lad Cloaked in Green, Tiny Hat,
Blaze Badge Magic Rock,
Metroid, Fusion,
Don't Say Corbin in the Mirror 3 times with the lights off,
Marlboro Racers Pocket Punks,
Marlboro vs. Donk Conk, Scrooge 4, Scrooge More, and Yoshi's Island. Just like with the NES games, Ambassadors would get early access to Game Boy Advance titles, with everybody else getting them later on. I f***ing wish.
Is this the part where I get to riot?
Nintendo never made GBA titles available outside of the Ambassador program. I'm sorry, what? Now, I could yell and complain about this with blind gamer rage, which I really want to, but there was actually a pretty decent reason for why this was the case. It relates to the technical aspects of how the 3DS was built specifically, but to put it simply, the 3DS was not built to emulate GBA games like it does other Virtual Console games. The Ambassador GBA games use up the 3DS's CPU in a way that makes it so no background tasks, stuff like Wi-Fi, your friends list, save states, and even sleep mode, could be utilized when the 3DS was in GBA mode. I'm sure enough Nintendo could have gotten them to run better if they put in a good bit of extra effort, but at that point it might not have been worth it for them from a financial standpoint. Or they were just lazy and didn't feel like it. That was probably just as likely. GBA games just really didn't run all too well on this thing, which is why they'd be put onto the Wii U Virtual Console instead when that service eventually came around. Jumping ahead a couple years though, would come the release of the new Nintendo 3DS and new Nintendo 3DS XL.
And before you ask, yes, new is part of the revision's actual name, and it's just as confusing and stupid as you'd think. I thought I was buying a new 3DS XL when in actuality I bought a standard 3DS XL. I'm in shambles. Is it my fault for not paying close enough attention? Yeah, but I'm still gonna complain about it. I might be making myself look more stupid here, but so does the new 3DS XL, so it's checkmate, bitch.
With these consoles coming out, obviously came the increases in hardware to them as well. So, on top of a few exclusive games that could only run on these new systems, stuff like Xenoblade Chronicles 3D, Fire Emblem Warriors, and Minecraft, there were also some games like this on Virtual Console as well. SNES games are exclusive to the new 3DS because much like the GBA games in the Ambassador program, God forbid these things run well on a normal 3DS. That doesn't mean the GBA games would be coming to the new 3DS as well though. Don't get your hopes up too soon, my friend. You're expecting too much of them. But hey, as unfortunate as it is, it's nice that we have these SNES games here at all. Games would come out at a pretty decent rate, and there's a nice lineup of both console and portable titles. Nowhere near as great as the Wii Virtual Console was, but it was nice for what it was. Around this time though, the 3DS wasn't the only place you could get your retro game fix.
Here comes the airplane!
As there was an entirely other Virtual Console library to choose from.
The year is 2011, and all hell just broke loose as the Wii U was unveiled for the first time at Nintendo's E3 press conference. A boy the Register goes over what the Wii was about and what it was capable of.
Oh, wow, that was a serious case of deja vu. Oh man, I think I'm gonna have to go lay down. I think I'm gonna have to go lay down.
I just don't get it, Doc. Whenever I think about the Wii U, I just want to vomit uncontrollably, but I love my Wii U. It lets me play so many great Wii and Wii U games. The option of a virtual console is great, and being a Nintendo fan in 2016 was terrible.
I'm diagnosing you with loser. Now go get a fucking dog or something. That'll fix all your problems.
But the Wii U Virtual Console didn't have Nintendogs on it.
They what?
Semi-Portable Despair would release on November 18th, 2012 with a solid 0 Virtual Console games and no mention of the Virtual Console period. This was another if I've ever darn dandily seen one. Oh boy.
One of the big things people wanted to see on the Wii U was a new iteration of Virtual Console. The one on 3DS was nice, but there were even more possibilities when it came to a brand new home console version of the service. Come January 23rd of the next year during a Nintendo Direct, and we'd have a dedicated section talking specifically about the service on Wii U and when it would come out. The plan was to have Virtual Console come out right after the first Spring System update, where it would come with...
Oh, don't tell me. I bet we get NES games, SNES games, and 64 games, all returning from Wii Virtual Console. Hell, we might even get, like, GameCube, GBA. I could play, like...
They only added NES and SNES games, and then just kind of pissed off for a year. This was really not a great way to start things off.
Yeah, no shit.
Only NES and SNES games? Like, the libraries for these systems aren't bad, but we'd already gotten NES games twice up to this point with Virtual Console, and the games we'd got at launch for both, while not bad, just weren't exciting anymore. Plus, the games they were giving us had already been available on Wii Virtual Console, so we were essentially starting from scratch again in terms of releases. During the Direct, Iwata stated how they weren't able to offer the entire lineup by the time the service starts, which I totally get. Getting these games to run on Wii U compared to Wii isn't as simple as hitting the port video game button like a lot of people might think, but the fact that they had nothing new prepared at all, no surprise games or even one new system available at launch, I'm sorry, but the launch was just kind of pathetic. At least with 3DS, you had Game Boy and Game Boy Color titles, which were something new to look forward to, but here they just don't have that. Iwata mentioned how Game Boy Advance games would be coming at some point, but there wasn't a concrete release date, and that along with the fact that it wasn't here at launch, just made it overall kind of disappointing. To ease some of the pain though, any Wii Virtual Console games you transferred over to the Wii U, you'd be able to buy the Wii U Enhanced version at a reduced price. Even though the Wii U emulation quality wasn't really a step up from the Wii, but we'll get to that later. There'd even be a little program available for the first few months of the service, celebrating the 30th anniversary of the Famicom, where each month through July of that year, Nintendo would be releasing NES games, get this, for 30 cents for 30 days.
Do I smell deals, or is that just the burning toast again?
Okay, this on the other hand was pretty nice. Yeah, the games themselves might not have been the most exciting anymore, but 30 cents? Hell yeah, I'll shut up and stop complaining. I get to play goddamn Corbin's Quest. Again. Okay, maybe this wasn't too exciting. A couple of these NES games, part of the program, would be releasing slightly ahead of the Virtual Console's official release, which would be April 23rd, 2013. Nintendo's plan for the rest of 2013 would just be to release NES and SNES games, the majority of which were already available on Wii. There would be some surprise releases though, like with Earthbound finally being available on the service after it notably missed the Wii Virtual Console release, even after being specifically name-dropped by Iwata during E3 2005. Many of these older titles would end up just holding us over until the next console was added, because we were starved and would take anything at this point. What would that next console be though? Well, it's none other than GBA.
Yeah, and let me guess, I have to sign my soul away to some ambassador program this time around too, huh? Yeah, no thanks.
April 3rd, 2014, nearly a whole year after Virtual Console launched, is when we would get a new system available to play on there. Oh boy. Look, seeing it all complete now, I think that Wii U Virtual Console is pretty neat, especially coming from someone who started using it a lot recently for the first time. But as it was coming out, it was just kind of pathetic compared to Wii Virtual Console and even 3DS to a degree. Games were trickled out at a slow pace, with many of them being titles already available on Wii. It just wasn't as exciting anymore, and didn't seem like Nintendo cared enough to really go all the way with the service. Yeah, Game Boy Advance titles on Wii U are cool, but when all that was available prior to this was just NES and SNES titles we already had other means of playing, as well as taking nearly a full year, it would be a sign of things to come for the rest of Wii U Virtual Console's life.
Shut up, you picky bitch.
It would take a whole year to get another major system added to the service, but this time it definitely felt a bit more worth it. Starting January 14th, 2015, we would be able to download Wii titles from the eShop, and starting on April 1st, 2015, we would see the addition of both N64 and DS games. Definitely a lot more to play around with this time. It was weird how Wii games weren't digitally available for purchase from the start of the console's life, but considering the Wii was already backwards compatible with Wii discs, that was hardly an issue. Wii games downloaded directly from the eShop worked a bit differently from when you loaded up through a disc as well, which, according to Iwatodai, was why it took so long for these games to be available digitally. Downloaded games would load up straight from the Wii U console, whereas discs would send over the console into Wii mode and you'd be put into a Wii menu until you swap back over. So now, on top of standard Virtual Console games, there would be new Wii releases coming out alongside them as well. Like I mentioned though, N64 games also came to Wii U as well. Yeah, whatever, that's great and all, but the other system they added on the same day over here is looking kinda fine, so frankly, I don't care. DS games on Virtual Console. Now this was something to get excited about. At the time the Wii Virtual Console came out, the DS was still being pushed by Nintendo, so those games obviously wouldn't be on that system's Virtual Console. Now that some time has passed though, it makes some more sense that they'd be added onto Wii U's version of the service, and they were a welcome addition. The DS obviously has its iconic dual screens, so Nintendo gave us a few options to choose from when playing a game from the system on here. One screen on the TV with one on the gamepad, one of the screens being displayed larger than the other, with both being on the TV, or even rotating the screen as a whole to better suit certain games. None of the options here are quite perfect, and it's probably a bit more comfortable looking at these displays on an actual DS or 3DS, but I think they work fine for what's here. With the inclusion of DS, it finally seemed like Nintendo was going to be pushing some more interesting and unique games on Virtual Console.
Oh, you make me laugh! You make me cry!
While Nintendo would still trickle out games up until, and even a little bit after the release of the Switch, there wouldn't be any other systems added. I can understand not adding Game Boy or Game Boy Color since they might have wanted to keep that a 3DS only thing and as a selling point for Virtual Console on that system, but no GameCube support? People were clamoring for GameCube games, and it was when nostalgia for the system was starting to get big. It would have made all the sense in the world for them to do it, or hell, if you're not going to add GameCube, then maybe go for something more obscure from your back catalog of games, like Virtual Boy. Or, you know, just flesh out the Virtual Console game libraries already on the damn system and actually fix the scheduling for these releases? Get the Super FX titles added on here, or even add in more obscure stuff for games that had never been localized before. Do stuff to get people more interested in the service again. They finally released a version of Earthbound Beginnings, or Mother 1, outside of Japan, which is cool and I'll give credit where credit is due, but that was about it. Don't you leave my main man Doshin the Giant hanging like that. I know it was primarily on GameCube, but it originally released for the N64 DD, so this geek freak can dream, okay? But they never did. Nintendo just didn't seem to be trying as hard with the Wii Virtual Console like they did back on the Wii, and the brand may have honestly peaked where it started. The library was lacking in comparison in many ways, the scheduling was abysmal, and finally, adding in button mapping isn't an excuse to have the emulation quality look like it's this goddamn malnourished. Look how dim the screen is! Hey, we may never have gotten Sega Genesis and Master System games on here, but a shit ton of TurboGrafx 16 games were released well into the Switch's life and well past the Wii U's cremation. Why the f? I know it sounds like I'm being harsh to Virtual Console on Wii U, but I'm actually rather fond of it. I just look at instances like this and see the possibility for what could have been and how much other cool stuff could have been done with the service if only it was given the love and care it deserved. I actually started using Virtual Console just recently after hearing about its soon-to-come closure, and I wish I did it a lot sooner. There are a lot of really great games both on here and on 3DS, some of which were straight up changed or altered to work on the new hardware, and others which are hard to find physical copies of nowadays. Virtual Console aside, there are a lot of great download-only titles on these systems that'll just end up getting lost to time. But we shouldn't worry, right? We have NSO after all, and that's essentially the spiritual successor to Virtual Console. There should still be a lot of these retro titles available there. September 18th, 2018, or as I like to call it, the Rapture. After 2 console generations of free online for their games, Nintendo finally decides that it's time we cough up some cash to play online instead. Considering how PlayStation and Xbox had you paying to play online for years now, it wasn't all too surprising Nintendo wanted a taste of it too. Excuse my profanity, but when I first heard about this, I was rather peeved. We'd had free online for about a year and a half up to this point on Switch, so to suddenly charge us for it was pretty annoying. The one nice thing here, however, was how Nintendo would be offering their online for only $20, as opposed to Sony and Microsoft $60. It'd be a lot less annoying though if the online didn't suck. Even 4 years later, Nintendo Switch Online, as it functions with online games, is abysmal. It was stated by Nintendo executives that one of the reasons it became a paid service was so that they could continue and improve the online service. We decided to charge for the service because we are concerned with customer satisfaction. Well, that's ironic. I'm not here to solely sit here and rant about Nintendo's online experience, though. No, instead I'm here to complain about one of the things included with it. Along with the online service, Nintendo would be adding in a selection of NES games as a bonus for people who subscribed, essentially acting as the spiritual successor to Virtual Console.
So why does this irk me so much?
Well, for starters, I mentioned how one of the biggest issues with Virtual Console and Wii U was the extremely poor scheduling for new games. So now let's take that and make it worse. The selection of games included at launch were fine, but again, it was all stuff we'd seen before. Even by the time a new system was added, it was just SNES stuff, a library of games we'd already seen to death on Wii, Wii U, and 3DS. I mean, it's nice being able to take these on the go with the Switch, but you could already do that on 3DS as well. The rate these came out at was terrible. You'd be waiting months for new games to come out on NSO, and there was never a guarantee the games would even be worth the wait. You're telling me I waited 4 months for Spanky's Quest? Oh wait, never mind, they have Dig Dug 2, it's fine. Nostalgia for these games were so far buried into the ground, they made their way to the other side of the world by now, which is to say that nobody f***ing cared. It was a nice little bonus along with the online subscription, and honestly, that's all it needed to be. So then why treat it like it's the new Virtual Console? With the NSO Expansion Pass being released for $50 back in October of last year, it's become clear to me that Nintendo views these retro games as more of a selling point for the service than the actual online itself. And that's not okay. That's not even mentioning how ridiculous $30 extra is. You get N64 and Genesis games with certain DLC for other games as well, but that doesn't really feel worth it in my opinion. The DLC is game specific, so there's no guarantee everyone with the service will be interested or even get any use out of it. My next main problem goes for both the legacy games from NSO as a whole and the DLC, and that's that you aren't guaranteed you'll be able to keep it. With these games I have on my Virtual Console, I've bought them to own, and so they'll be here until the day I have to bury this thing along with my other one. The eShop may be shutting down, but the purchases I've made are here to stay. With NSO, as soon as Nintendo decides to pull the plug on the service, all of these games go with it, and guess what? There's no alternative on the eShop for buying these games separately. Once the Wii U and 3DS eShops go down, the only official way of playing these games will be through a subpar subscription service with no guarantee it'll be around forever. You might be able to get a good amount of these games physically, but the retro game market is crazy right now, and it won't even apply to certain games as some are download only. I backed down from my stance here a bit, and you wouldn't have to listen to the
ramblings of a loser, ta chickadee ta
anymore if Nintendo just offered another more permanent way of playing these games on Switch. Man, I sure do have the itch. The stank itch. The stank itch that's gotten me hankering for some good old Nintendo Legacy content. Let me just hop onto the eShop and go over to the, that's weird. There's no tab on the side where you can go buy Nintendo's older games. Maybe you just have to search for them instead. What kind of sick hell is this? Let me buy games separately on the eShop, and while you're at it, add in the consoles and games like GameCube that we wanted back on the Wii U. You'd simultaneously be making shitloads of money, as well as making your fans happy and supporting game preservation in the process.
This just in. Nintendo f***s themselves so hard that continuing to describe the situation in an analogy like this would lead to some imagery not suitable for live news. So, instead, I'll show you this chart. Cole, I think you put the wrong pictures in the hard drive this morning. Nintendo's decision to close the Wii U and 3DS eShop has caused uproar amongst game talkers everywhere. Why would Nintendo do such a thing? I don't know. But I think the more pressing question to answer is, why is this the most important news segment that we have today? Or, better yet, why is my paycheck below the poverty line? Getting some intel now that says you shouldn't mention how little we pay you live on air, or we'll throw you in the ditch outside of the building like the last reporter. Well, that's a weird way to say a slow news day, but alright. Start stocking up on your favorite eShop games now, because if you don't, then they'll be gone quicker than my bitch ex-wife Karen. F you, Karen. F you. Give me my fucking kids back, bitch! Thank you for listening to this Channel 31 News emergency broadcast, because just like you, we have nothing better going on today. That's all for now, but remember, here at Channel 31 News, we're reporting all the crimes and the weather, and we're doing it for a paycheck. I've been your host, Terry Tailbaiter, and have a great rest of your evening, everyone. Wait, so that's why Rod Boddington was in the ditch this week?
The closure of the Wii U and 3DS eShop would have sucked enough on their own, but it's just pouring salt in the wound when you realize that those storefronts, compared to both NSO and the current Switch eShop, are better in pretty much every way. More games and systems available, better interface and load times, and easier access to Nintendo's back catalog of games. I very briefly mentioned it earlier back at the start of this gamer talk, but while you won't be able to add funds to the Wii U or 3DS after August 29th, there's still a way to add funds after that point. As long as you have the Nintendo Network ID on your 3DS and Wii U linked to the account on your Switch, any funds you add onto your Switch should also be added onto the other systems as well. So, to prepare for the closure of the 3DS and Wii U eShops, I made a decision. A financial decision, and a poor one at that. I went through the 3DS and Wii U eShops and purchased a bunch of the different games that I've always wanted to play from here, whether it be from the games themselves only being available digitally, hard to get a hold of physical copies, or generally just because they're good games and I wanted to have an easier way of playing them. Specifically so that I wouldn't have to shill out an extra $30, if you know what I'm saying. I thought I'd go through some of the games that I bought, and generally just some games that I'd recommend picking up before the eShop closes. So, we've got quite a few to go through here. We might as well get started. Hello?
We're sorry for your loss and we're on our way. We'll be there soon to give it a proper burial.
Oh, thanks, but you didn't have to...
Sorry we're late. We had to drive through 14 red lights and a daycare to get here, but we still made it in one piece.
I offered to drive, but I left my license at home.
And somehow I think you would have done better than Bert did. And he actually has limbs.
Kyle said you had something planned?
Yeah, the 3DS and WiiU eShops were closing down, so we were gonna play through a bunch of games I downloaded. Apparently.
Oh, sweet. What are we gonna start with? Is that a retro game?
I told you this would happen.
Shut it.
What? No, this is just,
What the hell is a Joe song?
It had multiplayer, okay?
Now, while the WiiU eShop is filled with plenty of those weren't exactly the kinds of games I was looking to download and save for myself pre-eShop closure. I started off going straight for the Virtual Console titles, going for a mix of games I've always wanted to try out, games that were altered to work on Wii U, and games that I have a lot of fond memories with already. So, do you guys want to get started with some of these older, more retro titles? That's what the Virtual Console is about, after all.
Some what games?
Oh, come on, man. Just lay off the retro game hate for like a day.
No way. Not happening.
Seriously, dude?
Seriously, I'd rather eat at a Denny's than play those things.
Man, this Grand Slam is hitting the spot.
I think I'm gonna be sick.
I think these eggs gave me bed bugs.
I'm pretty sure our waitress is getting arrested outside.
I still don't want to play.
I paid for your meal and the hospital visit afterwards. You owe me this one.
I don't know why you guys were overreacting so much. It wasn't that bad to me.
That's because you physically can't eat and you didn't have to contract IBS like the rest of us.
Yeah. Whatever, guys. Bert, you're joining us in playing these retro games tonight. No buts.
Okay, fine. But just this one time.
Sweet. The first couple of games I bought from the Virtual Console were Paper Mario and Sin and Punishment for the N64. These are two games I've always wanted to try out, and while they're both available on the NSO expansion pack, I want to have a way of playing these that allows me to actually download them to my system and keep them around for as long as I want. Plus, with Sin and Punishment, these digital releases on Wii U and NSO are the only ways of officially playing the localized version. After that, I went on over to the NES library and downloaded all the light gun games available. With games that use a light gun, there's no way of just porting the standard version of the game, since the only way of getting it to work, even with a light gun, is to have a death trap display on standby. So, to get these working on here, they were changed up to use the Wii Remote pointer controls instead. Definitely a different feeling than using an actual light gun, but it still works super well.
Wait, what are you doing?
Killing ducks, just like they're intended for.
Gimme. It's so easy, it's so simple, those little flying bastards. If I'm to be honest, I'd like to just put my hands around their necks and strangle them as hard as I can. But instead, I just gotta fire at them, which is fine. It's loud. It's real loud. It'll hurt. They'll feel it. They'll know when it hits them. Man, what a rush.
You know, if you like that, I have a couple other light games here too.
It's not a duck. It doesn't hit quite the same.
Up next on GBA, I nabbed the two Klonoa games available, Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3, and Kururin. Klonoa because I love that franchise to death, Kururin because the game looked like a fun time and never released in North America prior to Virtual Console, and Mario Advance 4 because it includes all of the levels you'd normally unlock via e-reader. The e-reader, if you didn't know, was this weird card accessory Nintendo made for GBA where you'd slide in these cards and you'd unlock some extra stuff for compatible games. In the case of Mario Advance 4, those were some extra levels, and considering how these cards are expensive as hell now, I thought I'd pick this up just in case.
I don't know how I feel about that clown Klonoa guy. He's a little bit too pixelated for me.
Then I nabbed Mario and Luigi Partners in Time and Animal Crossing Wild World on DS because those are my childhood favorites, and it'd be sacrilege if I didn't.
Whoa, dude, are you okay?
My limit! I'm reaching my limit!
Your limit?
My retro game limit! My give a shit tolerance is waning!
Oh, we can take a break if you want. Here, how about this?
This game really ain't that good, but god, do I love it. A lot of people like to make this game out to be the devil incarnate. Okay, bad choice of words. But from the decent bit I've played so far, well, not good. It's not Judgment Day levels of ass. The game has some performance issues, aiming your gun can feel a bit clunky sometimes, and the experience as a whole is just kind of repetitive and doesn't do anything all too special or interesting, especially for an M-rated Nintendo-published game. To call it one of the worst games on the Wii U is fair, but I've played worse games from that same year. I mainly just have a blast playing through this game from following in the footsteps of two internet funny men who turned what's supposed to be a badass stone-cold killing machine into the funniest video game character I've ever had the pleasure of witnessing. Playing through the game and giving the main character Ivan a stereotypical Russian accent while also turning the character as a whole into a bumbling idiot takes this game from a 2 to a 10 for me, and I wouldn't play it any other way.
No, germs.
They used to call Ivan Lady Killer back in high school, but frankly, that is untrue. Ivan does not like to discriminate. He kills men too. Bang!
One little Ivan jumping on the bed. With on the bomb now bleeding out the bed.
Ivan is big fan of Lou Bega. Watch this.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Come on, everybody, it's time to die.
Bang!
Put that one on your portfolio.
I also bought Pokemon Rumble U because it's an eShop exclusive and I played the 3DS one a lot as a kid. It's not a must-buy game, but I just thought I'd mention it because otherwise I'd be getting hate mail for the next month. There were these amiibo figures sold alongside the game as well, and for North America at least, were only sold at GameStop. Yeah, that's a note from me. Thank God they're not actually required to play the game. As for some genuinely good games on the eShop though, while I haven't gotten around to buying either yet, Metroid Prime Trilogy and Xenoblade Chronicles X are two I've had my eye on. Wasn't super big on the original Metroid Prime when I tried it out for the first time a couple years ago, but considering a physical copy of the trilogy is wowee, that's a lot of money! Yeah, I think I might just nab it anyway one of these days. Plus, I'd love to give the game another shot since I've only heard great things about it. Then, when it comes to Xenoblade X, if you end up buying the game physically, it runs worse than 3 dumbasses post-Denny's, and you'll need to download the data packs in the Wii U eShop in order to make it run better. Then, just to rapid fire through a few of these, I got Fatal Frame Maiden of Black Water because I heard that game was good, Mini Mario and Friends Amiibo Challenge because it was free, Star Fox Zero The Battle Begins plus Training because it was free and looked neat, and then my collection of the weirdest shit I could find because why the hell not?
Alright, DB, you got Bert conscious again? I'm just about to switch over to the 3DS stuff, unless you guys want to get a round of Crystal that says it has over 120 stages and local multiplayer. Plus, it was only $1, so that means it's gotta be good.
1, I just finished giving him mouth-to-mouth, so he should be good. And 2, for the love of God, no.
Awesome, I was hoping you'd say that. Now let's take a look at some of the stuff on my 3DS then.
As I mentioned earlier, the 3DS is currently the lifeline for DSiWare titles, so I thought I'd pick up a couple. Here we got Escapade, the sequel to the predecessor of Star Fox. The original Game Boy game before this one was never released outside of Japan, so it's cool to get a taste of it here with the sequel. The art style here is really low poly and almost wireframe, kinda like something you'd see on the Virtual Boy, just that it's more charming instead of migraine-inducing. The other game I got though is honestly one of my favorite purchases in a good while. That being Photo Dojo. Take some photos, record some sound effects, and bam, you're a character in the game. You can even add your own stage backgrounds. This is great. I've always wanted to beat my friends up in front of Weezer. The amount of stupid and chaotic stuff you can do here is fantastic. You could go up against a horde of other characters you've created or duel with a friend. This is the type of bizarre but charming game you just wouldn't see out of Nintendo nowadays, which just makes it all the more special. It's pure chaotic fun that had me laughing until I was in tears. It's honestly a must-buy in my opinion in terms of games to get before the shop closes down.
Oh man, let's do this stage. The memories are already flooding back.
That's not exactly a memory I'm looking to think back to, but I will admit it's pretty satisfying to beat the shit out of a BitCrunch scalper.
This game is fantastic. What else have you got for us?
Well, for Virtual Console on the DS side of things, I bought Pokemon Crystal since Pokemon games are expensive as hell, and I thought it was funny that it came out in 2018. And on top of that, I also got the Mysterious Murasame Castle, the sister title to The Legend of Zelda on the Famicom. This was also released for the first time outside of Japan on Virtual Console, hasn't seen a release outside of it.
Hold it together, Bert, because what if I told you that we're about to mix the old with the new?
The 3D Classic series, when Nintendo looked at the 3D slider and were like, we actually need to use this thing. The series would consist of 6 classic games, completely remade in order to better utilize 3D on the system. Sometimes this would be a new perspective on the game, simply adding in some more depth to the landscapes, or in the case of Urban Champions, completely rebuilding the game in 3D with a new perspective to show it off. I'd pick up Urban Champions since it was the coolest out of the bunch to me, and Kirby because I can't help myself. It's look at the little guy.
Pretty cool stuff, eh, Bert?
I am conflicted.
Now for the more general eShop titles I picked up. Soul Hackers is a game part of the Shin Megami Tensei series. With the game's sequel coming out just recently, physical copies being a bit more expensive, and me generally just being interested in trying it out, I thought I'd pick it up. Although I heard that the sequel wasn't really that good, so... The only other SMT type game I've played is Persona 5, so it'll be interesting to see what this other side of the series is like, because from what I've heard, it can be quite different. I've been meaning to pick up Dylan's Rolling Western for years now, and now that I've played it, god damn, I wish I got this sooner. It's super fun. It's this interesting mix between resource management, real-time strategy, and tower defense, and I haven't played anything quite like it. You play as Dylan the Armadillo and are tasked with defending this here town. To do that, you'll need to roll around the map collecting resources, building up defenses, and taking down these rock monsters called Groks. You have a limited time to collect these resources and set everything up, so the game can get kind of tense, and you'll have to decide where your time is best spent during the attack phase. It's a really fun game, and one I'm sure I'll be going back to again once I find the time. Now for the free-to-start titles, Stretch Mo and Badge Arcade. No matter what game you get in the series, Stretch Mo, Push Mo, my stock mo is Crash Mode, and now I'm broke, no! These are some pretty fun puzzle platforming games. Then with Badge Arcade, you can spend your real hard-earned geek bucks to unlock badges for decorating your 3DS home screen. Every time I think about this game, it just makes me depressed over how boring the Switch UI is.
Come on, man, cheer up. I mean, one day they might add more than 2 themes to the Switch.
I just don't get it. It's just a fucking pink rabbit.
The very last game I got from my whole eShop escapade required me to take a trip on over to the My Nintendo website and pay 200 platinum points because we're getting Flipnote 3D, baby! Draw a series of images and watch them get cycled between each other like a flipbook to see your animations come to life. While the original Flipnote died along with the DSi storefront, it still lives on here through Flipnote 3D. At least for the next few months.
Oh yeah, let me try. I'm great at this kind of stuff.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Done.
Okay. Let's see what you got here.
What the f***?
And so comes the end of an era. An era where legacy content and old games were easily available to purchase on multiple different Nintendo systems, where game preservation actually seemed to matter to the company, at least to a degree, and where I could happily scroll through the eShop knowing I had a good back catalog of my favorite company's games available to play whenever I so felt like it. But that's just not the case anymore. Ever since 2018, Nintendo's just been going downhill in some ways and continuously making strange anti-consumer decisions, with how they treat their own back catalog of games being one of the major ones. Availability of their older titles is limited to 3 consoles as part of their online subscription service, with the release of the games on it even more of a slow drip feed than the WiiU was. With no alternative way of purchasing these games on the Switch eShop, it's a safe bet to say that, as of now, The Wii U and 3DS eShop is the best way of playing any of Nintendo's legacy content, and soon it'll all be taken away. I was a stupid, dumb, stupid kid the time I owned a Wii U and 3DS. So I never really knew much about the Virtual Console service or paid much mind to it. Now with it closing, however, I've finally gotten to really use the service for the first time, and I love it. There are so many great games on here that I've always wanted to play, but I didn't have the means of getting physically. Plus, getting to organize these games and move them around on the different menus, especially on the Wii U, is just beautiful. It's really satisfying getting to see this little collection of Virtual Console and downloadable titles I have on here, from the Highs of Klonoa to the Ivans of Devil's Third. It's a long gone era of Nintendo, and while they had their own issues at the time as well, there was a certain bit of charm, personality, and care that you just don't see anymore with the company. Even after mentioning the games that I picked up before the service shuts down, there are still a massive amount of games that will be lost to time, whether it be eShop exclusive downloadable titles like DSiWare that were already almost lost, or the first party Nintendo games not available anywhere else currently. Game preservation is an extremely important thing in
this realm we call video games. Delicious.
Which is why it hurts me so much to see these storefronts close down. The closures were inevitable, but at least with the Wii or DSi, we knew that there would still be a place to play a lot of these games on Wii U and 3DS. Now though, we just don't have that. Nintendo doesn't seem to care about preserving their own game history or offering their older titles in more places, which honestly just baffles me. I know they're trying to use these games as an incentive for people to buy their online service, but it just feels unnecessary to me at this point. You could probably be making more money and pleasing more of your fans by just putting these games on the eShop as well. But that would just make too much sense, I guess. I'm really gonna miss the Virtual Console and everything that it stood for in game preservation. Through the highs of the original Wii service and the mediocre output of the Wii U, I'm happy that a lot of these older games were available to so many people for the time that they were. So, we've got until March to enjoy this service to the fullest before it's all violently nuked out of existence. I might pick up a few more games in the different eShops here or there, but for the most part, I'm pretty content with what I've gotten out of it.
It's been nice having you around, but times are sadly different now. I just hope that one day we'll be able to have a service as good as you were for preserving older games and giving people a place to play them. You know, man, it really brings a tear to my eye to see you go, but I guess it just has to be this way. I'll never forget what you did for me. Can you hold these? What do you mean it's gross? They're for you!
We provide a little scenario here. Someone whose only Nintendo console is a Switch tells me that they want to play some older era Nintendo games for the first time, and asks what I would recommend. To this I'd without a doubt say the Wii U for its huge Virtual Console library alone, along with the Wii U already being backwards compatible with Wii games right off the bat. I buried you out here nearly 2 years ago out of anger and spite from the pain being a Nintendo fan in 2016 caused me. I never really thought there'd come a day when this was ever really warranted. Define warranted. Thank you for everything, Virtual Console, and I guess thank you for everything too, Wii U. I'm really gonna miss you.
Nah, man, you almost gave me a heart attack. F you.
We're going back to the jungle this holiday.